Hi, everybody. Welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. It never ceases to amaze me some of the things that I come across that I wasn't even looking for, didn't even know existed. And that's what happened with this video. So a while ago, one of you had sent me this website, LDS General Conference Corpus, which is very valuable to me because I usually use the scripture citation index to search General Conference talks, but it only goes back to 1942. And then it has all the Journal of Discourses, which also include conference talks. But there's this gap between the Journal of Discourses in 1942. Well, this website allows me to search for those talks within that gap. And I was thinking today, you know what, I want to try and find more modern day prophecies that are not in the scriptures because I recently created a timeline for those type of prophecies. And so I decided, okay, I'll search for the word fulfillment. And that comes up a lot. And I was just kind of scanning through here. And then one of these results caught my eye. It was something from 1905. And so I looked up the conference report on Internet Archive. And as I started reading what I found, I wanted to kind of like look a little bit more, see if there was anything else, because it wasn't as interesting as I thought it was at first. And I just happened to come across this. It's a talk by Patriarch SW Richards. And as it turns out, he has a really interesting story, a very, very interesting story about Joseph Smith, and then a vision that he, SW Richards, had. Well, I'm not going to give any spoilers. Okay. So this is a really exciting video. I think I found him. I tried to look him up. I think this is him, Samuel Whitney Richards. I think it's a match because this listing right here says that he was the president of the British mission. And that's what he says in the talk. So I think it's the same person. And what I'm going to do, I would normally read from archive.org, but there are a bunch of things that I wanted to highlight that I can't on archive.org. So I'm going to read from my transcription on my spreadsheet called Quotes, Visions, and Visitations. So it's been a while since we visited this spreadsheet, but this is a timeline where I'm trying to capture every vision, visitation, dream, near-death experience, end-of-life experience, where somebody comes in contact with heavenly messengers. And this one was either 1843 or 1844. I don't have an exact date, but it was during that winter between those 2 years. I have a tally at the bottom of the spreadsheet where I'm tallying up the number of experiences by decade. So this is going to be the fifth of the 1840s. So now the 1840s are tied for third place as far as the number of visions, visitations, etc. Okay, so let's go ahead and read it. It's going to be the whole talk. It's not really, really long. But I have to read the whole thing because you'll see. Okay. My brethren, sisters, and friends, quite unexpected to me prior to coming into this meeting, I have been requested to say a few words to you on some matters touching my history and experience with the prophet Joseph Smith. This is already starting out really interesting. He wasn't even expecting to speak at General Conference. And he knew Joseph Smith personally. Okay, continuing. I'm thankful that I can say I was quite intimate with him while he was living upon the earth. There is a little experience I had with him that perhaps no other person living today could relate. In the winter of 1843 to 1844, about 6 months prior to the death of the prophet Joseph Smith, a messenger was sent to me from Nauvoo to ask me if I would be one of a company of pioneers to explore the Rocky Mountains and to find a place for the church to go. That request came from the prophet Joseph Smith. Now, Hopefully that's something that you already knew before watching this. I've actually done videos about this. Joseph Smith knew that the church was going to go to the Rocky Mountains. On my spreadsheet called Quotes A through Z, currently row 291 for Joseph Smith Jr., Rocky Mountains, I have 4 quotes from Joseph Smith himself talking about going to the Rocky Mountains. And then we also have this quote from President Wilford Woodruff. And I think my friend Kaitlyn, with Anticipating Christ's Return, I think she just did a video about this. It looks like 2 days ago. I'm recording this on Friday. Make sure to subscribe to Kaitlyn. I'll put a link for her video in the description box below. But I'm pretty sure she's covering this quote. So just let me read this really quick. This is from President Wilford Woodruff. You can find this in Conference Report, April 1898. Okay. Among other things, he said, this is Wilford Woodruff talking about a meeting with Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith said, "It will fill the Rocky Mountains. There will be tens of thousands of Latter-day Saints who will be gathered in the Rocky Mountains. And there they will open the door for the establishing of the gospel among the Lamanites, who will receive the gospel and their endowments and the blessings of God. This people will go into the Rocky Mountains. They will there build temples to the Most High. They will raise up a posterity there. And the Latter-day Saints who dwell in these mountains will stand in the flesh until the coming of the Son of Man. The Son of Man will come to them while in the Rocky Mountains." I think that's a really important thing to take note of. There's a school of thought out there that thinks that everyone is going to come here to Jackson County, Missouri. Like the entire church has to come here first before the second coming can take place. And no, I think church headquarters is going to remain in Salt Lake. I think that over time it's going to transition here to Jackson County. Anyway, but that's not what this video is about. But you can see, we already have a lot of evidence that Joseph Smith knew that the saints were going to come to the Rocky Mountains. At the time, I thought it a little strange that I should be called upon for a mission of this kind, as I was but a young man in my teens, but my acquaintance up to that time with the prophet Joseph was such that I could not say no. I replied, yes, I will do anything that the prophet Joseph wants me to do. That is in my power to do so. Consequently, I gave my name to be one of a company of 24 young men who were selected to travel and explore the Rocky Mountains and find a place for the church to go to, because the persecution was getting so strong then in Nauvoo that the prophet Joseph foresaw that the church would have to leave, retire from the civilized world, and go into the mountains. This was then a wild country. I'm reminded when I was in Europe in the early 50s, I was reported to the British government that I was immigrating many people from Great Britain into a wild country where they were liable to perish, and it was thought that this immigration ought to be stopped. Because of this, I was ordered to appear in London and give an account of what I was doing. I was then presiding over the British mission and immigrated many people to this country. I responded to this call and spent about 5 hours before a committee of 16 members of Parliament, telling them what I was doing. I had been to this valley myself, and I knew what it was. I told them that I was sending people to a country where they could own a farm and be as independent in their living as the lords and peers were there. I satisfied them, and they all shook hands with me at the end of our interview and wished me well, and I was invited by a number of them to come again to London and spend some time with them. I speak of this to show that the feeling of the people at that time was that this was a wild country and we were coming here to perish. It was the purpose of the prophet Joseph to come here and locate his people. I should highlight that. It was the purpose of the prophet Joseph to come here. So to come to Utah and locate with his people. Oops, let me highlight that. He organized this company and held weekly meetings with them for several weeks in Nauvoo. And when he had them sufficiently instructed, as he thought, to properly understand what was to be the character of their mission and fit out, he went across the river and made a start to go toward the mountains. Now, this is something that I didn't know, you guys. I didn't know that Joseph Smith was actually himself going to come to the Rocky Mountains. Okay, now look at this. It was his intention to go to the mountains with us as a company of pioneers, but he was followed by those that did not like the idea of his leaving. And while they were pleading with him to return, he told them, "If I go back, I go as a lamb to the slaughter." Nevertheless, they determined he should return, and he went back to Nauvoo. From there, he went to Carthage, and we all know the history of what followed. Suffice it to say, I attended 4 meetings of this company, and at one of them, which was in charge of Hiram Smith, and 3 or 4 of the 12 were also present, it was said that Joseph the prophet had remarked that he wanted young men for that mission who could go upon the mountains and talk with God face to face, as Moses did upon Mount Sinai. Okay, now, I don't know if he's being metaphorical there, like Joseph Smith. I highly doubt it. I think that he was a very literal person, so that's just an interesting statement. This company going up to the Rocky Mountains, which Joseph Smith himself intended to go with them, and then talk with God face to face, the same way that Moses did on Mount Sinai. Okay, continuing. When I heard that statement, I felt in my soul that I was not the one to go. And just before the meeting closed, I got up out of my seat for the purpose of going to Brother Hiram Smith and telling him I was not the one to go. For I did not feel that I could meet the conditions. But as I got up, now here we go. This is where the really interesting stuff starts happening with this vision. Okay. But as I got up, there was a voice came to me, and I heard it distinctly as from one standing by my side, saying, "Stop, rest a while." I took my seat again, and instead of telling the prophet Hiram that I did not feel I could go, I went home, and before retiring, I knelt by my bedside and prayed to my Heavenly Father. If I ever prayed in earnest, it was then, that I might know before morning whether I was a suitable one to go on that expedition under the terms specified. The idea of going into the mountains and talking with God face to face, as Moses did upon Mount Sinai, was more than I, as a boy, could think of encountering. No one perhaps need wonder that I should shrink from such a consideration. I retired to my bed and remained there about 4 hours, and during that 4 hours, I got the answer to my prayer. And when I awoke, now that's a clue there, so it seems that it was a vision, but a lot of times it seems like a vision and a dream are sometimes the same thing. Sometimes there are, I believe, visions as you're awake, but anyway. And when I awoke, I was prepared to go upon that journey and do just as the prophet wanted me to do. During that 4 hours, I saw all that I expected to see if I should live 1,000 years. Someone came to me and told me where to go, and I performed that journey that night while I lay upon my bed. I came to this valley first, meaning the Salt Lake Valley. I don't know how I got here, but I went down through these valleys into Southern California. It had been stated that possibly we might have to go that far. When I came here, I had to pass 4 sentinels. And in passing them, I gave a countersign, which I got direct from heaven at the time it was needed. Okay, let's pause right there. So, in this vision/dream, he's seeing the Salt Lake Valley, and then he's seeing as far down as Southern California, which we have a lot of members of the church today in Southern California and all of California. And during this process, there were 4 sentinels or angels that he had to give signs to. This reminds me of some quotes that I have. Let's see, I think it's right here. This is once again my spreadsheet called Quotes A through Z. It's currently row 508 for sentinels. And hopefully we all know this quote from President Brigham Young, where he's explaining the endowment and the purpose of the endowment. And he talks about the angels who stand as sentinels, that you have to be able to be worthy to pass by and have the key words, signs, and tokens. And then we have this quote from President Lorenzo Snow. At the time, he was president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, and he talks about how bishops and stake presidents stand as sentinels of those who want to go into the temple, and that they should, make sure to protect the temple, essentially. So now I have a third quote, and this comes from the vision or dream of Patriarch SW Richards. Very interesting that he would describe it in those terms. Okay, so I passed them all and went on down into Southern California. Then I was prompted to go farther, and I went into the northern part of Mexico. I returned from there to Jackson County, Missouri. And there I stayed and helped build the temple. I saw that temple thoroughly completed. In fact, I labored upon it until it was completed. When this was done, the vision continued, and I went and laid down my body in the ground, and my spirit left this tabernacle. Then I traversed this continent from end to end. I saw the Garden of Eden as it was in the beginning, and as it will be restored again. It was a land filled with verdure. I'm not familiar with that word. Verdure and vegetation, and with all manner of fruits on which man was living. I saw it filled with cities, towns, and villages, and people happy, living under the administration of divine providence. It was a Garden of Eden in very deed. Now, this is so interesting because I'm making this video on Friday, and the very last video that I did was about how this morning, after dropping our son off at school, we went for a little drive, and we passed by the temple lot, and I saw that they were having what they call the rummage sale. And I wanted to go in there because I saw that the doors were open, and I wondered if I could go in further beyond just the foyer, because that's the only place I'd ever been in the White Chapel. And it went all the way back to like a multi-purpose room type thing. And while I was in there, I went to the foyer and I took pictures of the different documents and things that they have on display. And the last video that I recorded, we read some of those. And one of them was this vision of the temple given to Apostle T.J. Jordan, which is not one of our apostles. It's an apostle from Church of Christ. But I'm telling you, I didn't expect to see this, first of all, at the Church of Christ church, let alone later in the day, coming across this talk in General Conference from 1905 from an apostle, a patriarch in our church, and his vision of the temple being completed. This is why, like, I feel like I can't really stop this channel. I feel like, I need to do this. I feel like there's a lot that's being learned that I'm learning, and hopefully you're learning too. And just putting these pieces together, I feel like the hand of the Lord is in this the further that I go. How is it that these two things happen on the same day? It's so weird. And then we also went over this, where it seems like this was their idea of what the temple should look like, according to Church of Christ that owns the temple lot. It's so, I don't know what to say. Let's finish up this talk. Now, all this I saw while I was sleeping, and it was so impressed upon me that it can never be forgotten. I saw that this was the result of the Latter-day Saints coming to these valleys of the mountains and following the direction that the prophet Joseph indicated. I could tell a long story about this matter if I had time to do it, but it is not best that I should. I wish, however, to make this statement, and I don't know if this is a typo, but this is how it's spelled on the thing, distinctly, that this coming to the mountains of the saints of God and establishing themselves here was under the special direction of the prophet Joseph Smith. Although there are those who say to the contrary, this is my testimony. The prophet Joseph Smith had all this planned, and if he had been allowed to have had his way, I believe he might have been with us even today. He would certainly have gone with that company to these mountains and have located the people. I was one of that company, and I think I have the names of the rest. However, the conditions became so severe at Nauvoo that the people had to pick up and leave in a body before there was time for this company to make the proposed exploration. The prophet Joseph and his brother Hiram were martyred in Carthage, and the mob would not let the people remain in Nauvoo. These are the facts in regard to this matter, and I am proud and thankful that I know of these things, and am glad that the saints are building up these valleys of the mountains. I saw them built up in vision. If the people of God will only go on and keep his commandments, the time will come when this whole land will be filled with towns, cities, and villages, and the earth will bring forth all that is necessary for the support and sustenance of the people thereof. Amen. And that has come true. I guess I'm going to count that as a prophecy. You know, again, only the president of the church can receive prophecy for the entire church, but, you know, maybe sometimes some people can see things, but whatever the case, I went ahead and I put this on my spreadsheet called Quotes, Prophecy Modern Day. I feel okay with that because he said this in general conference and it has come true. But man, it's I don't want to be a broken record, but I always wonder, what's the next thing going to be that we find out? There's all these quotes, prophecies, visions, all these things that I just never knew about, being a member of the church my entire life. And it's so fun to find them. Not just fun, but special and sacred. And in my mind, this church just becomes more and more and more grand. And I can see that the Lord really is directing this church, that this is the true church, that the prophet Joseph Smith really was a prophet. There's just too much, like when you put it all together. So, okay, well, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.